So, hello, good evening. My name is Miguel Amado. I'm here based in Cork City. I'm a curator, and I'm here with Salome Lamas, the artist with whom I've been working on an exhibition that is currently being presented at Triskel Art Center in Cork City. Salome, hi.
Hello, Miguel. How are you?
Nice to see you. I'm fine, and hope everything is well in Lisbon at this moment.
Yeah, exactly. It is. Thank you.
So thanks so much for joining us today on this conversation about your exhibition. The exhibition's title is Gaia, What If Meteorites Would Talk? And perhaps we could start by that. The exhibition is a presentation of a set of works and texts that relate to a larger project called Gaia. And maybe we could start by asking, or could start by discussing, what is the project Gaia in general, and then maybe how it started within your practice and the context in which you are operating towards it.
Yeah. So, yeah. No, as you said, thank you so much for the introduction. Yeah, I'm in Lisbon, and but I wasn't in Lisbon when it happened to me, like that they invited me for the project. And so the project started because I was commissioned, or there was the opportunity of visiting a nanotechnology laboratory, and there are a program called Scale Travels. That it's a collaboration between the laboratory and an art center here in the north of Portugal. And for me, I should be very honest, because I didn't really have an agenda for that, but just the thrill of getting to visit a nanotechnology laboratory, and to develop something in collaboration with a scientist was just yeah, I had to make time for that. So that's how it started, and it was just right after I was busy with another project that was called Extraction, the Raft of the Medusa. There was a commission with the patronage of United Nations to raise awareness for climate change. So I just came out of that, where I'm thinking about capitalism, white supremacy, sovereignty, and extractivism, and from that I enter this nanotechnology laboratory, and it's actually, this is something that you can find in the exhibition, a bit of that experience, because it was the first time I entered the clean room. So imagine that you enter this very aseptic space, that it's basically you have to wear these white suits with spectacles, and then you go on a tunnel and there's like air trying to blow all the remaining particles or something that you don't even see on this gear that they just gave to you. And you enter a super protected environment where like circuits and devices are being printed somehow, because it's called yeah it's a print actually, for those waffles. And so yeah, I was there on the clean room, but I also tried to explore the all the fields of research that were going on that lab, ranging from appliances to medicine, appliances to the food industry as well, and of course like circuit chips, and but also like the development of different materials and new fabrics. So I just had a very big spectrum about what was going there, and I was also interested in this idea of era. When you make an era, when someone is experimenting something, and also to try to understand what is the actually workflow or the methodology behind someone that deals with science. And I realized that it's not as different from the practice of an artist, actually, in the way that looking for certain answers. But also, I should say, because I'm very rigorous in the way that I lead my projects, and they're also very grounded on research. So in my practice, I could also find a lot of parallels also with, all the phases of the project development within both, world, even if they're very different fields. But we are also in a moment, and this is something that it was also, something that was brought up to the project and to the discussion with my collaborators, either from the lab or just people that I called for the project, which is this our urgent need for interdisciplinarity, and and how we really, and that was also, Scale Travels, the program was also, to make us think, how can science and arts work together to come up with new ideas and to come up with new ways to solve problems within our contemporary world. So this was also something that I was very much interested in exploring, because I'm interested also in the limits of the fields of knowledge, and how can we actually transform this, because now things are still a bit spread, and they all have their clusters, and I think that of our problems at this particular moment, it's a lack of imagination as well, and destroying those will just help us within the process of transforming this into something else that we are not pleased with, or just by the threat of extinction, or the climate change warning. So yeah, so I started the project there. I visited as much as I could. Unfortunately, on the second day of this visit, the guest house of the laboratory, because it's an international laboratory with around 500 international scientists. So the common language is actually English to be talked in there, and although it's located in the north of Portugal, on the second day, Portugal was going to go on a lockdown, and things with COVID, it got, just got, it was very, very scary. So they had to close the guest house. And we commuted back, me and my assistant, back to Lisbon. And basically, the next day, the world changed for me. And I think a few days after, because I'm saying this because I believe that the laboratory took measures way before actually those measures were implemented, because they were under other authorities, and they had other, and also, it's a laboratory that consumes a lot of money. So part of it's for research and like projects that that scientists establish between labs to for knowledge purpose and to advance their research. But most of the income of the laboratory doesn't come from that. It comes from all the clients from companies worldwide that send either briefings to develop certain things, or just, and I was not shocked, I should say, but there's things that are developed inside the laboratory that the scientists have absolutely no idea what is being developed. So and there's an agreement, and so if you're printing waffles inside a clean room, with a stamp that was given by that you got out of another remote part in the world, you don't know what you're producing. And I was told, and for me it was very clear also the way that I was engaging, it was not just the projects of research that were being developed or things that should not be made public because they're on an experimental level, but there was a lot of things that I couldn't have access to, because they were either classified, or even the people handling that data, they weren't aware of actually to provide something. And there was a moment around the project that I thought about doing something around those things. And so yeah, So then it was challenging for me, and I'm telling you this story as well because it was, I could return to the laboratory um, once for, yeah, another time for a couple of days, but very, very short. And then it was really impossible because the restrictions, and for them, they were probably the I think the lab never stopped working, but they sent all the staff, that were not the scientists, to make, to maintain the thing, and to make the money. Let's go
Mm.
again. Everyone was home and working remotely. So and these lasted until I basically, almost finalized the project. And I didn't finalize the project early on because then we're waiting also for materials for this record that you just mentioned. And that yeah, but going back to your initial question, okay, so what can I do if I can't enter, the lab again, and how, to come up with something. And along with, my thoughts about the pandemic, and also about my practice, and the, the works that I've been doing lately, that usually are is work that is very, kind of heavy and loaded, because it looks for places of conflict, and it looks for, territories that are a bit hard to depict or to judge even. And they show a lot of paradoxes as well. And just, I was thinking yesterday that, I did the one on climate change. Suddenly there's a pandemic after listening that we can tell people that we all gonna die. Then I go to Lebanon and I do a project there for like 3 or 4 years, as using it as a study case. And suddenly there's Beirut blast, because it's just like everything is there. And the same goes to to Ukraine, and the project that I did, back in 2015, when the war was already, and the troubles in Donbass were, rising, but they were not so serious as they are now. And Transnistria was just, again, a way to think that whole region and what was going on after, Russian imperialism transforming into a Soviet Union, and, the fall of the wall, and what now. So yes, I should say that they're very loaded, and they look for these, places that are, it's very hard to make, to draw statements about those places, because they're so complicated and complex in the way that their story is built. Um, so yeah, I couldn't go back to the laboratory, and I was busy with, these concerns and how to make sense of it all. And I thought that somehow there was something that also was present in the previous project, which is like, it's very evident that, the problem is us, within the world, or whatever we can claim. It's like we construct our world, the earth. And the project is called Gaia because, okay, what is actually nature, and how is our relation to nature within the Western culture. And and then realizing all the discourses of, one that branches into, okay, no, it's like we constructed nature, we can dominate nature, we extracted the whole thing. So then let's go on a prosthetic earth, and we can fix it, and we can create this whole artificial nature idea of nature. And that goes along with people that are also making a lot of effort into, journeys to Mars, and all this other spectrum. And they're very techno. They're also very enthusiastic about, science and technology. And then there's, I think, a totally different spectrum that are the ecologists, but the ones that they want to go back to something, and go back to nature and go back to certain, and there is something in between that I think it's the most interesting and actually plausible discussion, or at least I would like to continue that way, which is something in between, is how to make sense of this all and just to perceive our reality, or that yes, we can have, or we have the power to change that reality and the way that that we relate to each other, that we design our world. But then let's design it in a way that is not harmful to the environment that we inhabit, because we need that environment. And there's many things thought in the project, and you can find on the exhibition, because it's not just the notes and the text that is spread around the space, but also obviously like the video, and the video has a very clear message, I guess, that is in tune with this, because it was very polarized when the pandemic broke, and we tend to be either utopian or dystopian. And what the video proposes somehow, in dialogue with Frédéric Nérat, who's a French philosopher and political scientist, is that what if we consider utopia? Utopia is something that that something inside of us is broken and doesn't have an anchor, um, and that's fine. So what about accepting it and filling that void with affection, or with and try to create other things and to transform. And sometimes I even wonder within my work, not maybe Gaia, but also the other work that I was describing, isn't it, that by entering in dialogue with this kind of realities, is it that we are not just commodifying violence and cruelty as well, and just what if we just um, create things that are made out of desire, beauty, that have actually the power to transform our reality or not. So there's so many questions, and I think that Gaia is interested in all that variety of questions. And so what we did exactly was, I acquired a meteorite on YouTube, on eBay, I'm sorry, because I wanted to have like a big platform, like let's say eBay, Amazon, YouTube as well, um, to yeah, because it's one of the ways that we relate to the world. And most of you back home, I'm sure that it's different from going to the supermarket or going to a local shop. So I thought that by buying a meteorite, which is could be such a precious thing, and especially it's a meteorite that was here on Earth, that fell on Earth before the human species even existed. Um, it's just interesting to know that he's way older than we are, that he witnessed a lot of things on this planet. So and that we just came after. So the idea with the project was to ask the nanotechnology laboratory to hatch a QR code, because another thing was that we all started to pay with our cell phones and to scan things, and that opens a whole a huge door of 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 piracy and of hacking and of now there's going to be a lot of like security, like digital security is something that is really um it's really a subject now, and it's developing rapidly, because otherwise and we are already noticing disruptions within security leaks. um so I thought that would be a nice Yeah, I thought I wanted to use the QR code. That for me was something always very, very ugly, and I didn't see a reason to be using a QR codes. And it's a language that is very strange to me. Um, but I said, okay, maybe, maybe this is not just what the trend is, in terms of this is where technology is taking us, and this is here to stay, but also in a way to, yeah, to have it on a nanoscale that you can't really see on the meteorite. So, and by scanning it, that you can't scan it because you can't access it. We can just access it because when you have the meteorites being analyzed by a microscope that is probably, yeah, it's probably the size of this, my studio. And this was very kind of curious because they couldn't find the QR codes at first. One of the scientists, he etched the QR code and he passed it over to another one, but they couldn't find it because it was so small. And we're talking about a meteorite that, if when you visit the show, is like the size of my nail. So after a while, they could find it. They characterized the meteorite, which is like they took some pictures out of it, and I could use those images to, yeah, to come up with a way to display the image of the QR codes. And then I knew that what I wanted to do, and this was very, very present in the project, is, well, I don't want a lot of noise. I don't want to make, there was a moment I was thinking, and I was thinking about many things. It's like I have an exhibition space, I should fill the space, no? But then everything in me was against that movement. So I end up doing just this very, you know, yeah, just symbolic, because I needed something out of it that is just that little image. Of the QR code, and that allows you to access the content on the QR code. And the content on the QR code for me was, okay, what is this? He's here before we ever existed, and I'm sure he's going to be here, if we're gone. So what will it see somehow? What will it? So the idea was just to invite some musicians, and we were just like, okay, this is complicated, because maybe we can, there's a track on the vinyl that it's live, and chaos. I think this is what we actually can try to mediate and to reproduce. But everything, that all the other tracks, we have no clue. So so it was a very interesting dialogue with the musicians, and I think that I worked with people that we were kind of in tune, that some of them, when I wrote them, it's like, oh, meteorite, really? Because I've been thinking about that. And I've been another musician that was very tired and overworked with mainstream, and he was just home making tapes. Now he's probably back on an airplane touring like crazy, but he was like, no, this is very tiring, and all the main, and now I'm into chains music, and people experimenting other things. And so I invited a couple of musicians with different instruments, from a lyrical singer to yeah, to drums, cello, um, guitar. Yeah, just a couple of instruments, and I called musicians out of, just because either I knew them or I had worked with them before, or like, for instance, even that some were not in Portugal, so they had to send the recordings. Um, and with that, there was me and Miguel Martins. He's a sound designer. We tried to think of a record and how to tell this story. So it's like the meteorite comes out of our galaxy, he enters our, Milky Way, then he enters our atmosphere of planet Earth, then he witnesses, ice and the fire age, and all frozen and warm again, and then he witnesses, life emerging, and I mean not just human life, just life in general, and then after that comes chaos, the apocalypse, and Andromeda. And Andromeda is because, of course, we're already foreseeing that Andromeda will somehow merge with the Milky Way in, way far from our time, and the new world, what will become out of it, because it's also, we were debating a lot. It's like, are we totally doomed, or is there hope? So there's going to be a new world, and it's like, we can stay here, we can go, but there's going to be something coming after us, and that is reassuring as well, within this utopian also thing. And it's just, so it's a project made of, I think it's not a dark project. It's a project done with hope and desire, and I think there was something that we all share among, the ones that worked on the project. And then the book also displays, besides, um, some images, it also displays some, texts that we collected from these perspectives that I told you. Just having people in dialogue, even if they claimed things in the 90s, or they're saying those now, just to make connections with philosophers and, yeah, political scientists, and or even scientists as well.
So yeah, so fantastic. I mean, almost like a take on its own, like, because Salome, she's an artist, and she's also a filmmaker, and it could be like just a single shot from beginning to end. You just
Yeah, I'm super sorry.
no, it's fine. It's fantastic.
I'm really
No,
used.
you
There's
touched upon a
moments
lot
I
of
go
the
like,
things that. No, no, it's fine. You touched upon a lot of the things that we wanted to talk about. But just for those who have not been able to see the exhibition, so there is the meteorite itself, the small piece that you described, and there is the vinyl record that you produced, which includes the sound pieces that were made by the musicians that you invited, and you described like what they were trying to imagine. And then there is the etching that you also asked the lab to do, and idea very interesting of the etching and the QR code, and how the QR code became, on one hand, like this idea of the questions around security and digital piracy, but on the other hand, this immediate transition during the pandemic to a cashless society, in the sense that everything is paid through technology and so forth. But I think it's also very important so all of that is on display, and some texts that somehow introduce the story that you told us, like you are in this lab and you have to wear those suits that then became, we all had visions of those sci-fi kind of suits and glasses, or things that cover the whole body, that we all know this from films, but they become very conspicuous during the pandemic. And so they became part of our kind of visual literacy on a daily basis. So it's interesting that you were wearing those even before the first lockdown in Portugal and the majority of the countries in Europe. And it was this sentence that you said, even now, and it is written in the exhibition in one of the texts, and that you had mentioned before, like, and the next day life changed. And I think that's really interesting. Mm-hmm. But I think what we could just push a little bit further and clarify or further elaborate on is, so there is this video that you also did, kind of a short film of 3 minutes, which departs from the imagery related to the meteorite and the lab. But it's also where you introduce this word or concept of utopia. And the word utopia comes from your dialogue with the philosopher that you were referring to. And you also mentioned briefly now that the vinyl record is basically a publication, so that is accompanied by a book where you compiled a lot of writing from yourself, but also from different sources that you described, that somehow philosophers, political scientists that deal with the subject matter that you've been engaging with, particularly around questions of the Anthropocene, climate change, and all of that. But it's quite interesting that, so what we could maybe discuss now a little bit is, so the dialogue you had that enable some pieces of text that appear in the video, and how the video that then evolved, because I guess the video was the, although you work a lot with image, the video here maybe appeared at a later stage in the project. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about the video, and then about your practice of collaboration, because you say you work with musicians, you work with philosophers, and how all of that comes together. Okay.
Yeah, I think that what started to be was that the little plaque like that is on the exhibition with the image of the QR code was the first object to be produced. But then at the same time, the content for the QR code, so all the collaboration with the musicians and the sound designer is someone I usually work with on film, film for a theater, for cinema, but also we've done like plays and as also video installations, and each way is a different way of recording the sound as well. Some things they need recording. We did record for this project the musicians on studio, some of them they were able to send us a tape. When they came to studio, they would be sometimes a bit it was a bit like we would come up with emotions, or how can you de-intellectualize certain speeches. And so and also, for instance, like the lyric singer, she was very it was very hard for her to get out of the more academic, or she's used to a conductor, and so yeah, that was interesting. But then the texts that we have on the project were texts that I usually collaborate with someone that has a background in journalism, and she's a writer as well, and we collaborate in different projects. So I asked her to do a bit of research on this line, because it was actually something that we had been working on since we started to collaborate. So I guess that it comes very natural, the way that the subjects and the things that she was looking for were connected also with previous projects. So for me, the video was something that was not evident at first, because I wanted to be, there was a moment along the development of the project that I wanted to actually do like a longer short film, and that was just the project, and when I had access to the laboratory. um, but then I think that the video that we did is a nice way to convey not just something that is being said in a very straightforward way, but that also leaves you space for the audience to think out of that, and to try to try, it's very direct, but at the same time it's so subjective that each one of us will have to feel it with more, and disregarding the fact that it's straightforward in the communication. And what we tried to do was I worked with an editor, and we were deciding, how to, if to have sound or no sound within the film, because we wanted to have the QR codes, and it was just a way to display the QR codes. But then we felt that somehow the narrative of the project should be also in the video, and that is, you know, and the narrative of the project is, yes, there's a QR code on the meteorite, so you could actually see the machine that etches the QR codes, and you can see the microscope or the other machine that will then characterize or take the images out of the QR code, because Jerome and, you know, the two scientists, they were working, and they provided different material, and then I have many images that, you know, they take a very long time to capture, because, you know, each still image, it takes a very long for you to have an idea. I had, and this was also a restriction within the lab, because, you know, it takes, if they're using that for my project, they're not using it to make money on other projects. So let's say that for me to get hold on those images, it took them 11 hours of machine without stopping. So also because the scientist that was working with me, he was really amazing, and also very precise in what he was delivering. and I have a lot of images, but they're not, 11 hours sounds a lot, but it doesn't really translate in the number of images that I have. But so yes, and with that we decided to, um, but the thing is that, yes, we can make a sequence and we could also get more and more images, but now I give you an estimate of how it works. It's very hard actually to have something really fluid. And for us, also it was important to deal with this effect of the scale, and scale was something present in the project throughout the whole time, you know, the micro and the macro, and that is very visible when we talk about the cosmos and something that comes from out there, and then we, you know, we look at something and that is really nano. So yeah, I think that the narrative is there on the project, on the video, not just in the imagery, but of course, you know, there's also some surveillance images that were, you know, collected from, yeah, from out of, you know, sources out of the internet, um, like open sources, and they display, you know, surveillance cameras witnessing meteorites falling. So which is something that happens because, you know, when a meteorite falls, it can be very frightening, you know, it can destroy us as well. So there was also this idea about what actually causes destruction. You know, is it something that comes from outside of ourselves, or is it actually we that are causing destruction? Because we tend to be very concerned if a meteorite, you know, bumps against the earth, and there's all these sci-fi images, and that we already know, and we're counting on, you know, the number of yeah, just the number of films that are done with meteorites approaching, and how scary that is. Um, so there's a connection with that as well, and then there is another connection within the video, which is actually there is something that goes, that is the base of the construction of the editing that was done afterwards, on top of it. There is this, yeah, this model of a meteorite, this reconstruction that is a NASA reconstruction, and it's something that they are, you know, if that thing gets too close to our planet, they are developing, you know, a sort of a plan to go there and to fragment it in a way that it's not harmful to us, to try to get this kind of shield. For me, it's also curious that this threat is also in the video, but then to think that we are actually the biggest threat.
Okay, so I think it's a good moment to actually conclude with that thought. We are the relationship between humans and the planet. It's convoluted, and we're coming to realize that as humans we are actually those responsible for for the use of our planet in ways that are completely unrealistic and sustainable. But as you said, our story within the planet and in the cosmos in general is just one fragment of a larger story. And it was very interesting what you just, how do you introduce and describe the different elements of the video and how they somehow condense the narrative of the project. So thank you so much, Salome, for being with us today, and for, first of all, for your fantastic and very important work that a lot of us can see not only in this exhibition, but in film festivals, in other museums and galleries across the globe. And I hope everything goes well with you in Lisbon and for your next projects. And we look forward to seeing you here also in Cork as soon as possible. And the exhibition will run until Easter. So for all of you in Ireland and in Cork City in particular that have a chance to visit it, it's open from Wednesday to Sundays, and it's free for everyone. All right. Thank you so much. See you very soon then.
Thank you so much, Miguel, for curating the show and for hosting this. And it will be really a pleasure to visit Ireland
Thank
very
you.
soon. Thank you.
Indeed.